Good morning, wrestling fans. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Friday episode of Good Morning, Wrestling Fans. And we got a big pro wrestling weekend coming up, starting tomorrow. I know I made the big mistake last night on the new episode of Good Morning Wrestling Fans. I said that yesterday was this huge pro wrestling night. We have WWE Friday Night SmackDown, a special Friday night episode of WWE SmackDown, and a special episode of AEW Saturday Collision, all coming at us tomorrow night, live exclusively on pay-per-view. And this main event I just want to talk about, I hate to say it, but it almost actually makes me want to agree with Vince Russo about one thing, and Jim Cornette as well, when he talks about the booking of Jim Cornette. And that is really the only one problem that personally, and feel free to let me know in the comment section if you disagree with me about this, is I think Tony Khan's only real problem is that he more so books the show, the AEW television, for himself, the hardcore fans, the casual fans that might be sitting at home on a Monday night, or in case of this week, Thursday night, Saturday night, watching TV. They come across TBS and they see big stars like Paul White, like Chris Jericho, like CM Punk. And when they're flipping through the channels and they land on TBS or TNT and they see those big stars having all these great 5-star classic matches, that's gonna be what gets their attention and convinces them to stay and watch AEW television every week. And as much as I hate to agree with Jim Cornette or anything that he says about the pro wrestling business, I have to admit, I think when it comes to that, he probably is right. And as a community, I think we really need to bring in some new wrestling fans to the business. Back when they were getting millions and millions of views each week, I think for some reason some people don't enjoy the 5-star, 6-star matches you get from guys like Young Bucks, guys like Hangman Adam Page, guys like CM Punk, Swerve Strickland, and others that are in the AEW locker room, because just speaking for myself, I know that the diehard, hardcore pro wrestling fans are going to tune in no matter what. They can put any kind of show on Ring of Honor, on Honor Club, in that time slot, and you know that every Thursday I'm going to be tuning in no matter how bad I think it is or not. I'm going to be watching no matter what, and not just with Impact. That goes for every promotion that I am able to. For example, Post Wrestling, on the Post Wrestling Cafe this week on their Patreon, they went back and reviewed definitely a classic match in New Japan Pro Wrestling history. The first match between Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, which actually ended up being, I guess you could call, the precursor to what is now AEW. And that is what I want, and that is more fans tuning in and giving AEW a shot, becoming fans of the New Japan product, of, like I said, of all pro wrestling, Ring of Honor, DDT, Major League Wrestling, AAA, just pro wrestling. I know that it may never get to where it was in the big wrestling boom period, as they call it, in the 80s, and then again in the late 90s, the 2000s, and there. It may never get that big again, like in the Attitude Era, but that is definitely what we need in pro wrestling right now. And even if it means that AEW, maybe on Collision or Rampage, they start focusing more on comedic, I think that's the right word, storylines that focus more on the comedy aspects of pro wrestling. That's fine with me, as long as it is done well and it is done tasteful, because I'm sure if you have been watching pro wrestling as long as I have, you know that there can be good comedy in wrestling, and there can also be pretty bad comedy in pro wrestling, as well as the kids these days say cringy, I believe is what they say, where you're actually kind of embarrassed to be a pro wrestling fan. Like I said, personally, I never have been, no matter any of the silly, embarrassing stuff that they have had on during the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era. I've never been embarrassed. Both of my parents have always watched wrestling with me. My granny, that is how I got into it, because my granny loved pro wrestling, and she ended up getting me into it. Old guys here in the history of Detroit wrestling, big time wrestling, the Sheik, Dick the Bruiser, Mark Lewin, others. And I'm not even sure how old I was exactly when I started watching pro wrestling. I just know that I was very young, and I remember he used to have me on the couch, sit me on his lap, and I remember seeing guys because my dad was more of an NWA fan more than a WWF fan, so I kind of ended up finding guys like Hogan, the Road Warriors, Luger, more so by myself. And then as soon as I started seeing these larger than life guys on the TV, and just like, I know everybody says this, but it's like a real life comic book with real life superheroes coming to life, and that is what definitely got me hooked in pro wrestling. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening right now probably just think I'm silly, but this is almost like I believe it's called a call to arms or something, where we need to get more fans. More fans is what is definitely better for the pro wrestling business as a whole. And as they always say, yes, it is a business. It's called show friends, not show business, or something like that, I believe, is what Scott Hall used to say all the time. We definitely need some more wrestling fans and build a better community and a safe place for us pro wrestling fans as well. Like I said, I'm sure most people listening to this podcast right now will probably think I'm silly, probably make fun of me for it, but that is what I think we need in the pro wrestling fan community, is just for all of us to come together and be kind, be nice to each other. And here at work now, so gotta go, and hope everyone has had a great Friday morning so far, and until then, have a great pro wrestling day.